The Dallas Cowboys have officially entered a new phase on defense, and it starts with one decision that quietly set the tone for everything that comes next. Christian Parker is now the defensive coordinator in Dallas, coming over from the Philadelphia Eagles, a franchise that has built its recent success on discipline structure, physicality, and adaptability. While much of the early attention has been on Parker assembling his coaching staff and installing his philosophies, that phase will pass quickly. Before long, the spotlight will shift to what truly determines whether those ideas can succeed: the roster. Once that transition happens, it becomes impossible to ignore the reality facing the Cowboys. This defense has holes, and not small ones. The most urgent needs are on the defensive side of the ball, and the front office knows it. Fortunately for Dallas, the 2026 NFL Draft offers a rare opportunity. With 2 first-round picks, the Cowboys are positioned to reshape the identity of their defense in a single night, provided they make the right choices. What makes this moment especially fascinating is how well the Cowboys' needs align with the direction Christian Parker is likely to take the defense. Parker comes from a system that values versatility, players who can wear multiple hats, defenders who can disguise intentions and execute complex responsibilities without sacrificing physicality. This is not a scheme built on specialists alone. It thrives on hybrids, on defenders who can blur positional lines and force offenses to hesitate. In a recent mock draft by Pro Football Sports Network's TJ Randall, Dallas does exactly that. With their first 2 selections, the Cowboys address the spine of the defense by targeting a hybrid linebacker and a true cover corner, 2 positions that define modern NFL defenses. The names attached to those picks are Arvell Reese out of Ohio State and Colton Hood from Tennessee, and together, they represent more than just talent upgrades. They represent a philosophical shift. At pick number 12, the Cowboys are projected to select Arvell Reese, a linebacker who, under normal circumstances, would not be expected to still be on the board. Reese is widely viewed as one of the most impactful defensive players in the class, often mocked inside the top 5. His presence at 12 would require a very specific draft day slide, but as Randall notes, it is not impossible. Draft processes evolve, team needs change, and quarterbacks tend to push elite defenders down the board. If Reese is available when Dallas is on the clock, the Cowboys would be staring at a rare opportunity. Reese's appeal lies in how complete his game is. Early in his college career, he spent most of his time operating in the box, reading plays, fitting gaps, and showing a natural feel for traffic and leverage. Then, in 2025, Ohio State began to deploy him more aggressively along the edge, and the results were immediate. Reese showed he could threaten quarterbacks, set the edge against the run, and still drop back into coverage without looking out of place. That combination is exactly what modern NFL defenses crave. For Dallas, the importance of that versatility cannot be overstated. The Cowboys no longer have the luxury of relying on a single defender to be everywhere at once. With Micah Parsons no longer anchoring the defense the way he once did, there's a need for someone who can replicate at least part of that impact. Reese may not be Parsons, but he offers something just as valuable: flexibility. He can play off the ball, rush the passer, and erase mismatches in coverage. He gives Christian Parker options, and options are the currency of good defense. Adding Reese would immediately change how offenses prepare for Dallas. Suddenly, protections become harder to set. Play action becomes riskier. Short and intermediate passing lanes feel more crowded. Reese is the type of defender whose influence extends beyond the stat sheet. His presence alone alters spacing and decision-making, which is often more valuable than any single sack or tackle. As transformative as Reese could be, the Cowboys' work would not be done. Defense is not built solely from the front 7, and Dallas has been reminded of that reality repeatedly in recent seasons. Even before the decision to release Trayvon Diggs, cornerback was already a position of concern. Without him, it becomes a priority. That is where Colton Hood enters the picture at pick number 20. Hood is not the loudest name in the draft, but his game speaks clearly. At 6 feet tall and around 190 pounds, he has the physical profile teams look for on the outside, but what truly sets him apart is his coverage ability. Hood is a sticky defender, the kind of corner who stays connected through routes, who understands leverage, and who rarely panics when the ball is in the air. Randall's mock draft acknowledges that Dallas should remain patient with Siobhan Revel Jr., whose early professional struggles were more about injury recovery than lack of ability. Still, patience does not eliminate need. The Cowboys cannot enter another season thin at cornerback, especially in a conference loaded with elite receivers. Hood provides insurance, competition, and potential stability. What makes Hood such a logical fit is how cleanly he projects into an NFL system. He is comfortable in man coverage, disciplined in zone, and willing to tackle. He plays with confidence, but not recklessness, trusting his technique rather than relying solely on athleticism. In a defense guided by Christian Parker, that discipline matters. Parker's scheme demands corners who can handle responsibility without constant safety help, and Hood fits that mold. Taken together, Reese and Hood would do more than fill holes. They would rebalance the defense. Reese strengthens the middle and the edge simultaneously, while Hood stabilizes the perimeter. Suddenly, Dallas has answers at all three levels. Linebacker speed improves. Coverage flexibility increases. The defense becomes harder to predict and harder to exploit. This is why the 2026 draft looms so large for the Cowboys. With 2 first-round picks, they're not just drafting players. They are choosing an identity. Investing heavily on defense signals a commitment to winning games with balance, to no longer asking the offense to be perfect every week. It suggests an understanding that in January football, stops matter as much as points. There is, of course, no guarantee. Draft picks are projections, not promises. Reese must translate his versatility to the professional level. Hood must adjust to NFL route runners and passing concepts. But the logic behind the selections is sound and the fit is clear. If Dallas executes this plan, the Cowboys enter the 2026 season with a defense that looks faster, smarter, and more adaptable than it has in years. A defense capable of dictating terms rather than reacting. A defense that reflects the vision of its coordinator and the patience of a front office willing to build from the ground up. In the end, that is what makes this moment so compelling. Christian Parker's arrival was only the beginning. The real transformation starts when the Cowboys turn draft capital into foundational players. If Arvell Reese and Colton Hood are those players, Dallas will not just be filling needs. They will be laying the groundwork for a defense built to last. If you're a Cowboys fan, or really any NFL fan, you know that every offseason brings a huge question mark. A time to reset, reload, and reshape the team. But this year for the Dallas Cowboys, it's not about the quarterback, the defense, or the offensive line. No. This year, it's about one position wide receiver, and more specifically, George Pickens. Now, you're probably thinking, wait, isn't CeeDee Lamb the big star? Sure, Lamb's the foundation, but we're talking about a guy who changed the Cowboys' offense when he came to town. A young, dynamic player who could make or break Dallas' future. Pickens. So let's break it down. Do the Cowboys pay up big to keep Pickens in 2026? Do they use the franchise tag and make him the most expensive wide receiver on the roster? Or do they let him walk, accepting the loss of a key offensive weapon and scrambling to fill the void? It's a massive decision. And by the end of this episode, you'll understand why George Pickens is at the heart of everything the Cowboys need to figure out before next season. So stick around, because this decision, more than anything else, will define the Cowboys' future. The George Pickens dilemma. Let's set the stage properly here. The Cowboys are staring down 3 clear options when it comes to George Pickens in 2026. Option 1. Re-sign him long-term, locking him into a contract that will likely be one of the most expensive non-quarterback deals of the entire offseason. Option 2. Use the franchise tag. That's about $28 million fully against the cap. Expensive? Yes. But it buys Dallas another year to figure things out while keeping Pickens on the roster. Option 3. Let him walk. Let him test free agency and potentially sign elsewhere. This would free up the cap space but would leave a massive hole in the Cowboys' offensive game plan. Here's the thing. George Pickens isn't just another wide receiver. He's a game changer. The moment he came into the Cowboys offense, you could see defenses trying to figure out how to cover him. With Pickens, Dallas didn't just have CeeDee Lamb anymore. They had a legitimate second weapon. He made the offense dangerous, dynamic, and unpredictable. Remove him? Well, suddenly the Cowboys are back to relying heavily on Lamb. And that's not an ideal scenario. It's a situation that feels like it could go either way. And that's where we're headed today. Let's dive deeper into the potential ripple effects of each choice. CeeDee Lamb's role in the future. So, let's talk about CeeDee Lamb for a minute, because no matter what happens with George Pickens, Lamb is the backbone of this offense. Despite a season that some might consider a bit of a down year, Lamb still managed to pull in 75 catches and 1,077 yards, and he only played in 14 games. Now, the reason for his somewhat lower numbers was clear. Pickens took targets, Jake Ferguson emerged as a red zone threat, and Lamb had to deal with injuries. But here's the thing. If Pickens leaves, Lamb is going to have to carry the entire receiving core, and that's a big ask. He's a capable WR1, but is he going to be able to handle that kind of burden year after year? Co-host. Exactly. And remember, Lamb was constantly drawing double coverage in 2025. With Pickens potentially gone, you're asking Flournoy or a rookie to step up as the number 2 receiver. That's a lot of pressure to put on an improving guy. Right? This is the crossroads the Cowboys face. Can Lamb thrive in a heavy-duty role as the sole top option, or do they need to re-sign Pickens and keep that dynamic duo intact? The pressure is on. Ryan Flournoy, the wild card. Now, let's talk about Ryan Flournoy, the guy who's made some noise this season and could be a huge factor if Pickens leaves. Flournoy started the season on the practice squad, but by the end of the year, he had worked his way past Jalen Tolbert, Jonathan Mingo, and even Cavani Turpin in the depth chart. The guy is clearly building trust in the system and with Dak Prescott. Dallas didn't waste any time locking him into a 2-year deal, so Flournoy's future with the team looks secure for now. But here's the big question. Is he ready to step up as a full-time WR2 if Pickens walks? That's a tough ask. Flournoy showed flashes in 2025, but consistency is the key. The Cowboys are not in a position to give him a full season to figure it out, especially if they want to stay competitive. Cavani Turpin and Jonathan Mingo, the disappointments. Let's switch gears and take a look at 2 players who haven't really lived up to expectations. Cavani Turpin and Jonathan Mingo. Turpin, the former All-Pro returner, was supposed to take on a bigger offensive role in 2025, but he was mostly absent from the offense. His most significant contributions came in the return game, but even there, he was a step behind his usual standard. And then there's the financial question. Turpin carries a $4.7 million cap hit in 2026. If he's not producing on offense or special teams, is he really worth that much? It's something the Cowboys have to weigh very carefully. Then we have Jonathan Mingo, a guy the Cowboys took in the 4th round, hoping he would be a valuable contributor. Well, after a season where he's been passed up by Flournoy on the depth chart, it's looking like Mingo could be a cut casualty. His lack of production and minimal special teams value make him a candidate for release. These 2 players could be financially expendable and won't likely move the needle for Dallas in 2026. The free agent market. What are the alternatives? So if the Cowboys don't bring Pickens back, what are their options? The free agent market offers some intriguing, but imperfect, choices. Take a look at Alec Pierce, who's shown some potential with Indianapolis, but hasn't quite reached the level of consistency needed for a starting WR2 role. Then there's Wan'Dale Robinson, who's been up and down with the Giants, and Romeo Dew, who's had his flashes in Green Bay, but has been inconsistent. These are younger guys who could be good options, but there's a catch. They're not guaranteed to be the kind of player that Pickens was for Dallas. And none of them have shown the consistency to replace a player like Pickens immediately. On the other hand, you've got the older, maybe cheaper veterans like Deebo Samuel and Jawan Jennings. They come with their own set of risks, but could be effective, especially if the Cowboys are trying to balance cap space with roster needs. The draft. Could the future be in the rookie class? Now, if Dallas doesn't land a big-name receiver in free agency, there's always the draft. The Cowboys have 2 first-round picks in 2026, and there's no doubt that one of them could very well be used on a wide receiver. This could give Dallas the opportunity to pair a rookie with CD Lamb, building around a cheap, high-potential option for the next few seasons. The draft could solve the problem long-term, but there's a big question of whether a rookie receiver can contribute immediately and whether the Cowboys are willing to pass on a defensive upgrade to make this investment. The Dallas Cowboys have officially entered a new phase on defense, and it starts with one decision that quietly set the tone for everything that comes next. Christian Parker is now the defensive coordinator in Dallas, coming over from the Philadelphia Eagles, a franchise that has built its recent success on disciplined structure, physicality, and adaptability. While much of the early attention has been on Parker assembling his coaching staff and installing his philosophies, that phase will pass quickly. Before long, the spotlight will shift to what truly determines whether those ideas can succeed: the roster. Once that transition happens, it becomes impossible to ignore the reality facing the Cowboys. This defense has holes, and not small ones. The most urgent needs are on the defensive side of the ball, and the front office knows it. Fortunately for Dallas, the 2026 NFL Draft offers a rare opportunity. With 2